opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. We are officially adjourned. However, we will roll into our City Council workshop. Chair recognizes the City Manager.
Mayor, thank you very much. If you remember, the City Council earlier committed to co-sponsoring some work that was being coordinated by the Greater Wichita Partnership to look at the future of work, more specifically to look at the skills necessary and the strategies necessary for us to move forward, primarily in our important economic clusters. That work was contracted with Deloitte and has now been completed, and the partnership and other representatives of the Future of Work Initiative are here to share the results with you today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Floor to make some introductory comments.
Good morning. Thank you, Bob, and thank you to the council for the opportunity to be able to come to you and tell you what's happening with this project. It's imperative that we be doing this as a community. You know, as I reflected back over the last 30 months, and Bob, we were talking at the beginning of the meeting, we have been through a lot together. If you go back 30 months, we were working with the 737 production suspension. We thought that was going to be the big issue of that particular year. 3 months, or actually about 6 weeks later, COVID entered the scene and just compounded the things that we were working together in just addressing the needs and the issues in our community, all around workforce in a lot of ways. We were seeing a lot of layoffs. We were seeing a lot of people furloughed. And so part of it is how is it you started to step into that as a community to hit the needs and meet the needs of those who were being unfortunately laid off. During that time, you know, one of the things that we wanted to be doing is working together to get to those solutions. So again, thank you for your partnership and ongoing partnership to make sure that we position our region, our state, in a very positive way. You know, when we started this work, all those things were going on. I see Dr. Utash in the back of the room this morning. I know in the heart of the moment of the COVID, there was discussion, we will get on the other side of this, and there's going to be huge impacts on talent. Both in the workplace, and how is it we conduct work. We just didn't know what that meant, but we knew intuitively, because it was already starting to happen with AI and digitalization. COVID was just accelerating everything. And so part of this was looking to the future, which we're in today. And so what we're excited to come to you about today is to show you what's happening with this plan, but importantly, what's getting out of the gate already, how it's hitting the ground. From our team, we have several people who are here this morning: Evan Roselle, Megan Carver, and Tammy Bradley. Tammy was one that we actually engaged to lead as a project manager. You know, Bothner and Bradley, the very big part of our community. Tammy, I'm glad to report to you, is so committed to this work that it is now a majority of what she is doing going forward for the next 2 years. We've extended her agreement to work with the partnership and the other partners with this project to really getting into mobilization implementation. So we're excited to give you that information this morning as well. We also have several people with us that participated with the project. You know, one of the things that we knew was going to be really important is that you had a diversity of group engaged in this work because it needed to reflect our community, the thoughts of our community, both the visions, the leadership. So Deborah Gladney with Quick Hire is here with us this morning. Deborah was incredible to step in to work with the coalition. Joseph Shepard, who is the Chief of Staff for Lead for America. Also here this morning, Stephanie Harder with Textron Aviation, always leaning in, helping us think through how is it that manufacturing is advancing and meeting those needs. Dr. Utash at the front end of always looking at innovation and training. How do we get ahead of what industry needs? Sherry helps us with that. Keith Loyne with Workforce Alliance. Keith is a master of getting grants and getting them into our community. It's been incredible what Keith and his team have brought to our community and are bringing. So all these individuals and others were engaged in this. This is just who's with us this morning. So what we want to do is provide you an update on your investment. You know, as you work with the partnership with us, it's always reporting back to you on how your investment is moving things forward. We feel like that's a responsibility. That's being a great partner and steward of your investment. We also wanted you to be able to hear from individuals engaged in the process, just not myself or Tammy or Megan or Evan, but to actually hear from the community how they were involved in this and their leadership really formulated what you're going to see today. You know, the goal is, as this slide tells you right here, is that we want to defy expectations. We do believe, you know, as Austin has had moments to define itself, Nashville, other cities fall on that list, we believe if we can get our arms around talent and really prepare talent for today, but also the future, and work with industry, we have that defining moment for ourselves. And so that's part of our expectations for ourselves and our community to be doing in this work. When we started the project, you'll see formerly the Future of Work and Workforce Strategy. That's where we started. Even in what we call it today represents or emulates what we've been talking about, an evolution in talent. We really are calling it now the talent roadmap. So you're going to hear us refer to that in a lot of different ways today. I think it's important to note, too, is that we build on research and data. We do not look at things as silos of moments of opportunity. So if you think about pre-COVID-19, there was a project that we did throughout the region called Project Wichita. You're going to see some of the things tied back into Project Wichita, which is really important. So things like creating opportunities to retain college graduates, increased educational opportunities to meet the changing requirements for the workforce, support for career pathways and job development, manufacturing, STEM, technology, support after high school education to grow the regional economy. You've heard Sherry talk about, we've got 1,500 to 1,800 high school seniors that they graduate. Where do they go? We need to find them and connect them. So how is it that we give that support after high school, but actually as they're in high school and maybe even middle school? Develop strong talent retention strategies. So how is it that we make sure talent understands you don't want to go to Dallas, you don't want to go to Omaha, you want to stay in the Midwest, and you want to be in Wichita. You want to be part of this story. And so how is it that we do that? It's through very strong talent retention. The talent roadmap gives us the action plans to be able to do all that I just mentioned. Part of what we also understand is that industry has needs today. I will tell you, and Stephanie doesn't mind me calling this conversations out, we have frequent conversations from Stephanie, aviation, advanced manufacturing. Actually, it's across every industry sector. We need people. Every city in the country needs people. Every city pretty much globally needs people. So part of this is how as we step into this, working with our industry, with technology development, advancement, but also advancement of our individuals as well. We're doing that in a number of ways. One is working with the chamber, working with their staff. Keith, we've already mentioned with Keith Loyng with Workforce Alliance, Dr. Utash with WSU Tech, Friends University. An example there is cybersecurity, growing industry sector coming out of the COVID. One of the things we've actually done even with Dr. Carey is to develop and connect with a company, Nova Coast, who is now partnering with Friends. That's part of our responsibility to do too, is to connect industry with education, and it can yield a lot of great results. Newman University, Butler, all of them are engaged in what we're talking about today. So part of what we're looking at is not only what we need here, but as we hear across the country where talent may become available, there may be a company closing, we want to be proactive to say we have opportunities in Wichita, in this region, in this state. There's also been the aviation tax credit. Again, a number of partners, you were involved with this, the county, the chamber, the South Central delegation, our group. CNA legislation was just celebrated, and Dr. Utash may speak into that, but that was just celebrated as well here within the last few weeks. You as a city have invested in workforce development with ARPA dollars, not to be unnoted. I mean, that is a very important investment. Internship programs across our city. And we also, I know many of you were in the Deloitte factory, you were at the Deloitte Summit, and maybe even the event that they had as an opening of the Smart Factory on Innovation Campus. Again, I think it brought it all together of why we've been doing what we've been doing with Deloitte. So talent is the new infrastructure. And it is one in which we need to embrace both as how it hits industry needs, but also the individuals as well. These are individuals, these are people, these are families. So how we step into that, we have to be very deliberate. There we go. So these were all the funders that came together. The thing that I think is a great testimony for our community is the collaboration and the fact that this was not budgeted. as we went into 2021, or actually into 2020, this was something that was identified. It said it's a need. We need to step in it today. We can't wait. So all these different groups came together to put capital into doing this work. One, all these we're very proud of, and it also even gets to the state level. I know that Sherry and I had conversations with David Tolan, and David goes, this fits into the framework of growth. That's incredible because, again, it's a relationship between this region and what's happening in the state. So all these are partners that came to the table to make this happen. We also wanted to engage Deloitte because of all their extensive research in talent itself. They are known to understand talent, not only today, but where it's going. And you're going to hear about how they even forecast how jobs are changing. We know this type of information, and we'll be rolling some of that out to you today. The next slide is that we're not going to park on these long, but in the very beginning, we talked about what are going to be the deliverables for this project, and you see them listed here. And we wanted to have a collaborative regional strategy. We wanted to have regional initiatives. We wanted to have timelines for regional initiatives. We believe in accountability. If you don't put a timeline on something, it will slip. So again, how is it we have timelines on things that we know we need to be accomplishing? Data analysis. Build on what you know, and then also look to the future to forecast. All very critical. Interview findings. How is it we gather information from the community? All these were things that Deloitte, these were things that they were responsible for, and they delivered on everything that you see on this page. The next was really looking at what are the community strategy outcomes that we want to have. The alignment and clear focus, extremely important. One of the things I think that we should be proud of as a community is how in the last 7-8 years, the business community has really become aligned and working with the public sector. So how is it that we work with the public sector to make very strategic investment so that the private sector steps into it and really just accelerates what they may want to do? That collaborative spirit is one that I know is catching attention not only in the Midwest, but literally from coast to coast as we actually do attraction into our city as well. It's also the ability of what I mentioned earlier about differentiating our region. You have to be purposeful with this. It just doesn't happen. So how do we step into this and do it aggressively? The other is a competitive advantage. We love to be competitive. We don't like to lose. We're in this as a city, as a county, as a region, as a state. We have to be because other states are approaching it that way. So we have to think about this is a competitive issue. So we have to step into it with aggressiveness. The other is to take advantage of funding coming in, like Build Back Better. Big opportunity working with EDA through WSU. Again, how is it that we work with Keith to position Workforce Alliance to be as successful as it possibly can? You do that by having strategies of this nature that you point back to say, we have thought through this, we have solid strategy, and by the way, here is what we're seeing as results. And if you invest in us, this is how we can accelerate the results that you're already seeing. The other is on the one workforce grant. I know Keith will talk about more about this. You know, when we went and sat down with Keith about funding this project, it took about 2 minutes. We started, and Keith said, I'm in. And so, again, we appreciate that with Workforce Alliance and others as well. The last slide that you're going to see from me today is, before we turn it over to Tammy, is the implementation outcomes. Again, how is it that we make these things a reality, just not things on a page? So again, we're stepping into how is it we leverage. You know, one of the things that we feel is really important, again, is that ROI. And you got something from us the other day about with the partnership, the money, the investment you've made in the private sector. We're seeing 177 to 1 in CapEx on capital investment. 40 to 1 on payroll development, new payroll. So that ROI is really important. We want to continue to see that happen with what we're doing here today. The other part of this is I've already mentioned on the last about the number of high school diplomas, those who are graduating, how do we tap into that? So these are all things that we want to be measuring by. The other part of this, before I turn it over to Tammy, is that you heard me talk about competition. We are competing with regions. This information that you see today, we're at the leading edge of this, okay? So the more we talk about it, others are going to find out more about what we're doing. So what that means is we've got to increase our aggressiveness. We have to increase what we're investing in, how we lean into this, both from the private side and the public side, because there's a window here that we have to step into before everybody else starts to say, hey, have you seen what they're doing in Wichita? We need to emulate that. It's a compliment, but again, we're in competition for talent. So how does it retain talent, but also recruit talent? So again, thank you for the partnership with you to get this work completed, but not only completed, you're going to hear today how it's being launched already. So Tammy, if you'd come up for the next part of it, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. I am a little overwhelmed by this new challenge I'm taking on, but I feel confident in my colleagues at the partnership, of course, but all those individuals in the back of the room are really the ones in the front line of this, and this won't be done without them and their support. They've already given hours and hours to this effort, so I thank them too for being here. And Jeff, I think maybe, nope, that's our next slide. Okay, I thought we had one more slide about measurements on there. Jeff mentioned the disruptors we've had, and COVID and the 737 were obvious, but as Deloitte did their work, they reminded us that before either one of those things, we were seeing emerging technologies, we were seeing supply chain interruptions, we were seeing diversity and generational changes, all those you see on the slides there. So this has been a while coming to look at where we are with talent, knowing how competitive this is going to be. And so therefore, the roadmap that we're going to walk through this morning becomes the way we get this done. It was amazing to work with Deloitte through this process. They introduced us to data that we never would have had access to. We have a whole report called Data Rumble, where they brought in not only their own data, but they looked at all the reports that had been generated in our region and our state related to talent, workforce, economic development. And then we followed this process. And just a reminder, this was a 12-month process. It started last year, finished up the very first quarter of this year. We did a number of listening exercises with Deloitte. They did focus groups with a large section. I can't remember how many hundreds of people there were that were involved in just the focus groups. There were interviews done with community leaders, 15 or 16 of our community leaders. And then there was a group of people, some of whom are here today, and I'll show you a list here in just a minute, who really rolled their sleeves up and imagined what we could do to activate our community to meet the talent needs that are here and are only going to grow. So they are the ones who participated in the Ambition Labs and the roadmap workshops to get us where we are today. Here is a full list of those folks. If you ever need a project worked on where you need people to roll up their sleeves and get stuff done, I would recommend this group. It is amazing what they were able to do. Hours of time being challenged by Deloitte, working together to come up with a ambition statement, which is different than a vision statement. It is what we are going to do if we're going to be successful. And then figuring out how we get there based on our community strengths and what we can build on. So this is the ambition statement they came up with. And I hope everybody takes this to heart. I can't emphasize enough the time and work that went into this. We are a vibrant global community of possibility that invests boldly, takes risks, and defies expectations. And I'm going to break that down a little bit because each one of those phrases means something deeply. A vibrant global community. Look around our community. Look how diverse we are. Look at our major employers and the diversity of the people that they have on their teams. We are a global community. We need to be proud of that and show that and become even better at that. Possibility. We need career pathways that are diverse, and we need to find innovative thinking for solutions and collaboration. We want to invest boldly. We want to take risks. I look at Deborah when I say that because I remember sitting in those meetings where she challenged us to be risk takers. She herself is a risk taker. And then Ryan Bond with Thrive Restaurants came up with this defies expectations, and it kind of was the glue that held the group together. We want this community to be a community that defies expectations. And that led us to the formula that you see there. Many of you know I spent a large part of my career doing strategic planning. I love nothing more than a plan. And I may love this. Secondly, this is a cool formula. It shows us what we need to do. We need to be pushing these things, multiplying the effects together to get to be that community that defies expectation. The way the roadmap is organized is by these headings. The action steps, the strategies, if you will, come beneath those. We've devised a way to talk about these in a little bit of a more real-world way, and I'm going to walk you through those very quickly, but I'm going to ask folks to come up and give their perspective on this as well. The first way we look at this is fairly linear. I'm not going to read all of these, but as you see, underneath each of these headings is a commitment. That's Deloitte's language. I call them strategies, but it's a way to get this work done. Start with the focused commitment of vibrant global community, where we're going to have a coalition that regularly gets together. It may already be a coalition that exists. We don't want to recreate anything, but we want leaders taking a look at this and saying, are we making progress? We're going to look at gathering spots around the region that draw and engage diverse and multicultural audiences. We're going to have to look at, and I know this work has been ongoing for years. I worked on a plan and a campaign many years ago to keep air service here in Wichita. But we need to look at expanding air and rail connectivity to Wichita. And then we need to accelerate how we talk about ourselves. These campaigns like Choose Wichita are what gets our name out, are what makes us an appealing option for our community, and we've got to put that on steroids moving forward. I'm going to ask Joseph to come to the podium before I go into creating possibilities. Joseph is with Lead for America, formerly with Lead for Kansas, and I just loved his participation in this process.
Thank you, Tammy, and good morning, everyone. So I particularly enjoyed being a part of this group because it was a very diverse group where we had the opportunity to challenge each other internally. And when I think about the spirit of Wichita, that's one of the beautiful things about our city and our region is that we have multiple people from many different walks of life that bring different experience, different institutional knowledge, and utilizing the anecdotal data that we heard in the room, as well as the institutional knowledge of key community leaders, as well as looking back at the history of the city of Wichita and our region. What we found is that we move forward stronger together, we emerge stronger together when we embrace that diversity. And so at Lead for America, what we do is we really try to challenge the way young people see their community and recognize the challenges that they have in their community, letting them know that they don't need to go somewhere else to obtain success, but in fact, they can create change and make a difference right in their hometown. And in fact, that's where opportunity meets success, is when you decide to take on the challenges in your hometown community or in your region. And so going into this space, that was the mindset that I was really looking at, of how can we embrace our diversity, how we can truly look at expanding our economy and leveraging the tools and resources that we have in our economy by utilizing young people to strengthen our workforce. What we do know is that Wichita is originally relentless, speaking to what Tammy said about some of the brands that we are really trying to embrace with Choose Wichita. I heard someone recently say, if it can't happen in Wichita, it can't happen at all. When we look at entrepreneurialism here in our region, we know that there have been great things to come out of our city and our region, and what we are really wanting to do is show more young people that they too can turn their dreams into possibilities and into a reality to not only benefit themselves, benefit their families, but benefit our community and our economy. And the other thing that we really wanted to focus on, particularly in this statement, is again, getting people to understand the history of our city and challenging them in the way that they talk about our city and our region, particularly our young people, letting them know that opportunity exists right here in our region And that's one of the beautiful things about Wichita and about the region that we are in. We want individuals to invest boldly in those opportunities, but more importantly, to take risk. Wanting them to go to bed at night knowing that not only are they investing in their dreams, but also they are surrounded by a group of people, a community, a city council, a county commission that is invested in their dreams as well. The last thing I want to leave you all with is one of the key components for me that I deeply resonate with is moving beyond our culture of comfort to allow our community to take risks and try new things that will drive progress for our region. We know that Wichita embraces its diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the beautiful things that came out of these conversations is, as always, we have opportunities for growth, but we have our strengths. How do we leverage our strengths and our opportunities of growth to fill that gap, as the Kansas Leadership Center says, in order to merge forward and, again, reach that pivotal moment of success for our city and for those who make up our city and our region. We know that we have some great opportunities coming our way. We see an increase in the Latino Hispanic population, and we see great things happening all across the city with that. We also know that per the data, that with the labor shortages that we are facing, we have a unique opportunity to really utilize those who are differently abled, particularly in our BVI community. We have representatives from Envision, a part of this committee, to really help close that labor shortage and really utilizing them to show all of our people in our community, regardless of the walks of life that they come from, regardless of their thought or philosophy in life, that they have a role to play in our economy. And last but certainly not least, one of the beautiful things about our region is there are multiple pathways to success in regards to education, and Wichita already has many of those pathways in place right now in order to help our young people, again, reach their goals and reach that opportunity. If they want to attend a 4-year institution, we have that here. If you want to attend a 2-year institution, we have that here. If you want to get a trade or go to technical school, we have that here. We also now have fellowships available here. The city of Wichita is already benefiting and taking advantage of that. And so what we really want to do is continue to cultivate this spirit where young people are looking at Wichita differently, challenging some of the things that they've learned about our city, and encouraging them to, when they see challenges and they see a challenge that may hinder success from not only their community but their family, that they see that as an opportunity to build and to emerge stronger, not only for themselves, for their individual families, but as a collective community as well.
We'll all be around for questions if you have any too, but you can see exactly why I'm excited to be part of this work. That kind of energy, that kind of vision, making our community just notching it up so we are better at making sure everyone is feeling connected to success and what they're able to do. The second column you see here is creating possibilities. And this is an interesting, these strategies are interesting in many ways, but this first one builds on something that started years ago with the Chamber of Commerce here, looking at bringing business and education together under an umbrella called the Business and Education Alliance. It has been successful over the years, and now it's time to reinvent that loop as the world is changing and moving faster. That loop between industry and education and training also needs to tighten. And so we are going to be looking at that as we work through this, how we can be agile, as it says there. We're going to look at the creation of professional development and training pathways that connect talent to employers. And we're going to increase supporting services for those underserved in our communities. I think we have a couple of people here who will talk about some navigators we have already embedded in some of our underserved communities, looking at how to bring services, including employment and job training services, to the folks who need that. So with that, those are the strategies. I'm going to ask Stephanie Harder from Textron, Dr. Utash, one of 2 appearances she'll be making this morning, to come up and talk about that tightening that feedback loop and how you're looking at that from both the needs side and the service side. So you guys want to come up?
Well, thank you for allowing us to be here today and share some thoughts with you. Giving an open microphone to Dr. Utash and I is always a brave move. Thank you, Jeff. We wanted to talk just a little bit about this process, and we love the title of Creating Possibilities. That's what we do in our work every day, and we think about all the different talent pipelines that we need to access to make sure that people in our community are getting connected to meaningful work and a future that provides them with all the possibilities that they want to realize. So just as we dive into this, I just want to make sure to level set our expectations in terms of Textron's commitment to the Wichita community. We are so fortunate to be located in a community like Wichita, where we know that you all as elected officials and public partners want us to win as much as we want to win. And so we feel that partnership and that reality a lot. I'll remind you we have 3 business units of Textron operating in Wichita currently. And I just want to restate that. We have Textron Aviation, right, home to Cessna and Beechcraft. I hope you also know that we also have our sister company, Bell, the helicopter OEM based in Fort Worth, is operating here in Wichita and have put some new work here to help leverage the great talent that we have in our community. And thirdly, and Mayor Whipple was able to join us last week to get a briefing on our 3rd business unit located here in Wichita, Textron eAviation, which is focused on the sustainable future of flight and was developed in March with the acquisition of a Slovenian company called Pipistrel. So a lot of interesting new things happening for Textron. Why do I spend a little bit of your precious time talking about that? Because we're not only focused on today, we're focused on the future, and we want to continue to attract and retain talent here that takes care of our needs now and takes care of the future of flight and the future of manufacturing for many years to come. I will remind you, we have over 1,000 openings right now. What kind of skills and what kind of demands do we have for our workforce today? It runs the gamut. We have 525 different openings on our careers website right now, many with multiple openings. Everything from weapons engineers to accountants and welders and CNC machining and communications professionals. So I'm hiring for my team if anybody's interested. And as we think about how we close the gap and make more nimble feedback loops, it's important for us to have access to our educators and our educational institutions. We have a great relationship with Sherry and with all of the folks in Workforce Alliance, but we're Textron Aviation, we're big, and when we ask, people listen and we get an audience and we get those conversations very naturally to happen. We need all of our employers looking to grow here to have that same sort of nimble feedback loop, so they're able to state what they need and move forward. Business moves very, very quickly, and we want to be able to have a workforce mechanism that supports companies when their workforce needs change, because they're very evolving. So Sherry's going to talk a little bit about what that is going to kind of look like as we reinvent BEA, but it's going to be a little bit more of a nimble and open mechanism.
Thank you, Stephanie. So, Stephanie and I have had the opportunity to co-chair the BEA for the last 3 to 4 years. And we're part of it prior to that. So there's so much good that's come out of the Business Education Alliance over the years, and we're so appreciative, as everyone in the city should be, for the work that's come out of there. But one of the things that really has come out of the study on creating a talent roadmap is really how important it is for business and industry and education to be walking much closer. So I do think that part of the initiatives that come out of this will be kind of a recalibration, a re-engineering of what does that look like to move us forward under this talent roadmap. And probably, the most important thing is putting the right people at the table to have those agile and responsive conversations to workforce demand. And to Stephanie's point, yes, we hear from Textron and Spirit and our bigger employers, and this is not just aviation, this is in every sector. So it could be Ascension, it could be Wesley. Pick the sector you want to talk about. But underneath those bigger companies lie a lot of our small and medium businesses, And we've got to be responsive to them too. So a way to integrate just a real focus on education and business and industry working in tandem. A couple of other things that I would just suggest that come out of this is, the creation, we talk about creation of professional development, training pathways. One of the things that we're working with right now, I think that will help all of our industries, is if you were at the Deloitte session, they had a slide on the stage. This is Deloitte's, not Sherry's research, it's Deloitte's. By 2025, which is right around the corner, 1/3 of jobs will require a high school diploma plus an industry credential. 1/3 will require a technical certificate, 1/3 will require a bachelor's degree. 2025. So one of the things that, is coming out of this, another focused area, is the partnership that education has with K through 12, because they have an initiative that they want every high school graduate to also come out with a business asset, which could be a technical certificate, an industry credential, something that moves them to the world of work. So I think that that's an important connection piece as well. And then the final thing that I would just comment on is increasing support for underserved communities. I'm going to speak to something that we are doing at WSU Tech. I don't know how many people really know this because we're really not making it a WSU Tech thing, but we've created a community resource connector. And that person goes to work every single day at Empower Evergreen and is living and working and being a part of the fabric of that neighborhood and connecting people, connecting resources, United Way, Goodwill, Next Step Alliance, Workforce Alliance, education, helping people not be afraid of filling a FAFSA form out, trying to upgrade the opportunity for upskilling and reskilling of adults in that neighborhood, and also helping children understand that there's a pathway for them. So they started just recently, about 6 months ago. I mean, my hope is it's kind of a pilot program. We'll see how it works, but my hope is that the next step would be we would put someone in the Oaklawn area, and then we would ultimately put somebody at Chester Lewis. So those are some things that we're working on. So more to come. And always dangerous to give us the platform, but we're so excited about recreating what we can do for the city with regards to the outcome of this study.
This is so fun. All right. The next column here is investing boldly. I think we all know that we need to invest in these future forward skills. I believe that's exactly what the Deloitte Smart Factory is going to enable us to do. We need to drive long-term investment and ridership in our transit system. Again, I know this is something that is already in the works, but looking how business, industry, and our public sector can work together in new and creative ways. Deloitte gave us this example, and it's just one that's hung in my head here. Something like employee-sponsored shuttles to go from workplace and child care centers. Those make sense. Those are common sense approaches to what our community needs. And then we have to find a way to invest in ways that highlight our history and our diversity and attract talent to the region. Things like the Riverfront Legacy Master Plan, things like Project Downtown and Main Street Revitalization. These are what people pay attention to, especially young people pay attention to, excuse me, for our region. Anybody who's I have a few nephews and a niece who come to visit occasionally, that's exactly where they want to go. That's what they want to do. They're all in their 20s and 30s, and we just need to find more ways to do that. Finally, on the increasing appetite for risk, this is really where our entrepreneurs shine. People who think outside the box, who are innovative. We need incubators that advance new technology. We need highly focused relationship campaigns to get venture capital investments here in our target sectors. And we need to be challenging our status quo. We've depended on sort of the old way of doing business. How are we doing as a community by counting things? And we just need to be looking at our return on investment in different ways, longitudinal ways that keep us focused and adjusting and being agile and then moving forward. And with that, I'm going to ask Deborah to come up and talk about her experiences here in Wichita and what she's been doing with the roadmap too.
I'm pretty tall, goodness. Well, thanks for having us here today. It's really an honor and a joy to be able to have a seat at the table because it's something that is not always offered to everyone. And this column of increasing appetite for risk is something that's extremely near and dear to me for a lot of different reasons. I'm a child of African immigrants, came here in their 20s, only had $100. They didn't know anybody. There wasn't much in their home country, but so they were just hoping that they could come here and build a better life. And it was extremely risky. They had children, and it was a foreign land, foreign language, everything. And I recently went back to Uganda, and I couldn't help but think to myself, what if my parents never took that risk? What if they never left? My life would have been completely different. The opportunities that I've been afforded today would have never existed had they not stepped out and taken that risk. And so even Quick Hire, it's really birthed out of risk as well. I was actually 10 days away from my due date when we decided to start Quick Hire with my third son. And, being in my mid-30s and all of these different things. You just have all these obligations that could make you feel like this is not the right time, or that dream has sailed, that ship has sailed. But we knew we were passionate about what we wanted to do and what we wanted to accomplish. And, fast forward 2 years, we still have so much left to accomplish, but I've never been so fulfilled. I've never been so excited about what we're doing, what we're building, and the amount of opportunity. And so I say all this to say that this is truly what I think can really represent Wichita when we think about increasing our appetite for risk. What it means to me is that it's doing something that you may feel is uncomfortable for the sake of future possibilities. And so I also think about today, what feels normal. Honestly, at one point in time, it was uncomfortable. A group of like-minded individuals came together and said, hey, we're going to do something bold for the future of our city. And as a tech startup founder and CEO, I've come to experience just some hesitance and risk in a few key areas. The first area is capital investment. I've quickly realized that getting investment being based in the Midwest is already challenging, but what I've noticed about other Midwest cities is that what they've done and decided to do is they're going to invest in each other. And you've been able to see how different regions have been able to advance and overcome some of those barriers by investing in one another and investing in their local city. And so I think that that's a huge opportunity for us here in Wichita. Access to talent is a big one. Access to local talent can be challenging because startups are deemed as risky, and people don't want to leave their jobs to work for a startup just because of how startups are viewed. So changing that perception of what entrepreneurship means and the opportunities and the career development opportunities that come along with working for a startup. Not only that, but then trying to recruit outside talent can be a challenge as well. So there's a huge opportunity in that area. And then all of this just feeds into the need for establishing Wichita as a hub for innovation. I think that we have so many things, just a budding ecosystem and systems in place and people in place that could really lend itself really well for Wichita to be a hub for innovation. At the end of the day, copying and pasting is easy, but writing from scratch is really, really difficult. But you don't become a bestseller by writing what's been written before. So I really think we have a huge opportunity here to really be bold, take a risk, write our own story from scratch, and I think the future will really be promising because of it. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, really? We have these folks here in our community and they're doing great things, and I'm inspired every time I get to hear those those kind of words. So thank you. Real quickly, the work Deloitte did with us also allowed us to sequence these strategies, these commitments. So you'll see in the middle there, those are going to be our first priorities, the things we've just talked about. Then simultaneously, we'll be working in the other circles. But again, this is a great plan that allows us to be looking at what we need to do now while we focus and take advantage of other things that are out there. Just real quickly, I'm not going to go through this, but this is an example of the level of detail that's in this plan. This is the Business and Education Alliance reimagining it. It shows what the impact is, some things that are already going on. It gives us key steps to follow. And what's really cool about this, in my opinion, is on that the bottom right-hand quadrant there, where you look at what the level of effort, the level of impact, and the level of urgency is. As Jeff said before, we do not have time to waste. You'll not be surprised that so many of these work plans embedded in the roadmap have a high level of urgency. We, as a community, we've been talking about this, we now have a plan, and it's time to get to work. We asked Deloitte to do what we called a deep dive in 3 industries, to look at manufacturing, IT, and healthcare, so that we would have some idea of what those jobs of the future will be and how we can prepare for those. This is a great slide that I really don't have a lot of understanding of. I'm going to admit that, but I know others in the room do. When we look at Industry 4.0, we have the new ways of working. We have these things like big data, robotics, AI, 3D printing. These are all enabled by Industry 4.0 technologies. Those are what we hear. Those are what we know is already here. It's coming. And then it's going to require these future workforce with a new set of skills. And you see those there. They're human, specialized, and technical. That's all the work that you've heard about going on. We're going to be addressing those. So that's just a snapshot of manufacturing. Then what Deloitte gave us, and this is why we really feel like we have something special here that no other community has, actually packaged this way, is the kind of jobs that are going to be available. What it looks like today and what it looks like tomorrow, in great detail there for a position called a demand planner. They even gave us a day in the life of these positions, from waking up at 7:30 a.m. to ending your workday at 4 p.m. I mean, it is amazing the kind of detail. And we have this, like I said, for manufacturing, for IT, and for healthcare. And what's great is a lot of these skills that you see cross-populate. That gives us a benefit as a community to move across industry, so you're not just stuck in one, and have different experiences, upskill, move on. Dr. Utash has said this over and over. We need to be a community that values education, whatever that looks like. So that's what you see here. I did just another example in IT, systems engineer, the future skills that'll be needed, and again, a day in the life of. Amazing. With that, I'm going to turn this back over to let you hear from Keith Lawing, Dr. Utash again, and then Jeff's going to wrap us up. But Keith, if you could come up and just talk a little bit about what's happening now at Workforce Alliance and how you plan to engage with the roadmap. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Very happy to be here. Keith Loyne with the Workforce Alliance of South Central Kansas. And as Jeff mentioned, when this opportunity came up, we were just in the beginning phases of implementing one workforce grant we received from the federal government. And when we wrote that grant, we did not have the Deloitte project in mind, but we did have the Deloitte Smart Factory project in mind. We did have conversations from business and industry about where they were going with the skill sets needed for their workers. And so we wrote this grant very future-focused. And over the years, our board of directors, and again, real quickly about us, we're just your friendly local workforce board. We manage employment and training programs that come into this area. We do have a very strong board of directors. I want to recognize, I think one of my board's kind of members is hiding back there, Sally Stang from the city of Wichita. Really appreciate Sally's contributions to us. But the board said early on, the money you get from the federal government on an annual basis is not enough to make a difference. How can we make a difference in this community? And that's why we were very aggressive about going after these grants. And I would say in the last 15 years, we brought in over $50 million in employment and training funds in addition to what we get annually from the federal government. And so again, we want to be very forward focused. We want to align these grants with economic development priorities, where business and industry is going, not where they've been. And we also want to affect systems change. And so when this project came up about Deloitte and what they were looking at, this really fell into our wheelhouse. We knew that we could use our One Workforce grant to help support the project, and in the long run, we would be training for jobs that currently don't exist in this community. And that's the real key with this. What are those emerging demands, and how can we increase that speed to the marketplace to help business and industry expand here in the South Central Kansas region? So we're very excited about the outcomes of this. I'm kind of jazzed about some of those slides that Tammy just showed about that kind of day in the life and really trying to visualize what does the future workforce look like, certainly here in Wichita. And so some of the employers we're already working with on this grant, Nova Coast, Integra, BG Products, Spirit Aerosystems. I think anytime you have a company that's looking at dealing with technology and how that impacts their production, their hiring needs, and their skill sets overall, those are the companies we want to work with. And then I think just to wrap up my comments, and happy to answer any questions when we get to that part. I used to be the young guy in the room. My career actually started here in the city of Wichita many years ago. I'm now the old guy in the room, which I embrace, but it's really great to see young new voices at the table like Deborah and Joseph, and really appreciate their contributions and what they've been able to do. And the fact that some of the conversations that we've had over the years are adding to what we are doing now and lending into that. So it's been a nice arc for me to be part of these conversations, and very excited about where we are going with this project. I want to thank Jeff and the partnership and Tammy for all the great work they're doing. And like I said, when it comes time to answer questions, happy to participate. Thank you all very much.
So once again, I just want to thank you for your investment into this, because I think it really, really puts us on a map and a roadmap of where we need to go and what needs to happen. And I'm like Keith, I've been around a long time, so it's fun to see things that have happened before evolving into what should happen. But I just want to give you a little glimpse into some of the things that are already happening as a result, or have been amplified based on the information that we received from this, and some of the things that are going to happen. And I'm going to speak pretty much on behalf of Wichita State and WSU Tech when I talk about this, but we all know we have to reimagine what we're doing. Every organization, every business, we all have to reimagine how we're going to do the work that we do to get the outcomes we need, because the ways that we were doing things prior to COVID aren't going to work anymore. A lot of them don't work, and maybe they didn't work before that, but it was really amplified. So just to kind of give you just a quick overview of some of the current things that are actually happening that really pull right back into the talent roadmap is, we reinstated the Wichita Promise Scholarship Program in about 2 months ago for the summer. And we are doing full scholarships for sheet metal assembly, composite fabrication, and we added certified nurses aid for the summer, because we know that's a gateway into all healthcare professions, and we know that we need more. Right along with that, though, to be able to do that, we had to go to the legislature with industry and education. And we really appreciate the partnership that we had with all of those people to get the legislation for the criteria for teaching certified nurses aid modernized. And I'm happy to say, because of that modernization and because of the things that we've been able to make changes of at the state, we are in the process of providing to this community in excess of 80 certified nurses' aides in less than 60 days. So that's a big move in the healthcare industry. The other thing, of course, is the aviation tax credit. We're starting to work with Spirit and Textron and the supply chain on ways to advance that. But we are currently recruiting for that, and we are going to be recruiting off of the I-35 and the I-70 corridor, just like Wichita State is for that. The last thing I would say and what's going on currently is Wichita State and WSU Tech are very committed to providing applied learning opportunities for all of our students through the Shocker Career Accelerator. It's a new area that we've built. It provides the opportunity for earn and learn opportunities, internships, paid learning. People can get into the industries that they want to get in and work in while they're going to school. And we're reimagining how do the learning outcomes change, and how do faculty validate those learning outcomes out in the field versus always in the classroom. Future projects. I think Tammy mentioned the EDA grant that Wichita State, WSU, GWP, we all went together on. That is an $85 million EDA grant proposal. We should find out in August or September, but that would be a huge game change for this city. And that EDA grant is really focused on Industry 4.0, advanced manufacturing, automation, all the things. The other thing that you're going to be seeing come out of workforce development and effort between Wichita State and WSU Tech is some small stacks of IT training in software development, hardware developers, small stacks of non-credit training that are going to be coming out, and then we re-engineer those back to credit in our IT programs at both institutions. Thanks to the city, you're going to see the Future Ready Center at North High School for aviation and manufacturing in full force and fully alive by August of this year, and the renovation for the new healthcare Future Ready Center at WSU South is well underway. And we will start programs there in other facility areas while we're building that. And the final thing that I would say is that I think everybody's aware of the push for the biomedical campus in downtown Wichita, which is an effort of Wichita State University, KU Med, and WSU Tech. These are just a few of the things currently being done and amplified because of this, and that we hope are on the horizon in the near future, and then way more to come. So thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions later.
Well, as Sherry walked past, I wanted to high-five her. I mean, it's one of those things where hopefully this gives you a lens of what's underway within talent. It's very deliberate. These are deliberate strategies for intended outcomes. We know what we need to go after. There are things in the ecosystem. You've heard about the ecosystem. You know, when you look at how are we seeing progress, we can look at the ecosystem. How are we connecting workers to where the jobs are? Are we making progress there? Are we making progress with childcare options? These are all things in the ecosystem that have been brought out. How is it we continue to build this distinctive city? You know, how is it, you know, you all just did that recently around the ballpark with the project of the BPC, that those assets that are coming out of the ground this summer is fueling into what we've been talking about today. It's about creating that distinctive city because talent has options. You know, in my generation, you probably moved into geography of a region or a couple states away. My children today, the world is literally open to them because of technology and what they've grown up with. And so how is it we continue to build this city that's distinctive and authentic? That has to be a part of it too, is part of that built environment. The evolution of things. You know, one of the things coming out of this work is that we're not afraid to say it's time to evolve or it's time to sunset something. You know, sometimes we will just hold on to something. What we're demonstrating to you with BEA is that we're going to celebrate it. It's had some great successes, but given what we have learned, it's time to evolve it and to continue to evolve it. You just heard Sherry say, we have to continue to recreate ourselves. It's not just to be doing it, it's doing it proactively, because that's what's happening in the world right now. The other part is mobilization of individuals. How is it that we tap into people that we not necessarily have really tapped into before? We haven't been deliberate in doing that. So how is it that we upskill? How do we take someone that's doing a job today, great, but they have so much more potential by giving them the training, exposing them to what the opportunities are. So mobilization of people, extremely important. Make the unknowns known. You know, one of the things is that I think this work helps us understand where jobs are going, where technology is going to be shaping these jobs. What are some of the new jobs coming into play? What are some of the jobs that may be sunsetting, at least in the way that they're done today? All that is very helpful as we go forward. The other thing I love about this work with Deloitte is that I think it really gives us a framework on how we approach it, how we think about it. Tammy mentioned part of the next steps is getting out into industry and having additional conversations. This work gives us the platform to have that conversation. The thing that is so troubling for me as I work with economic development is when you sit down with companies and they say, we're ready to invest in capital as far as the built environment, but we don't have the people to support what we want to build. And I will tell you, that is happening across every industry sector. We have pent-up capital because we don't have necessarily the people walking into the jobs. So that disturbs me. I mean, it troubles me. And so it's one of those things, how do we unlock that? This work helps us be able to do that. This also is an attraction component. We've been talking a lot about retention, right, and expansions of local. The attraction component of this is really phenomenal as well. As we sit down with companies that are looking at different options now based upon where workforce is or where a city is progressing, when they see work like this, they see it as a differentiator. They see this as a community that says, they're going to be with me even after I make the decision to come. They're going to be working with me on my workforce development. The other part of this, and I'll wrap up with this, is what Deloitte, the Smart Factory, is bringing to us as a community. You know, part of this conversation started understanding that, as you heard in the Deloitte Summit, over 5,000 C-suite individuals are going to be coming through the Smart Factory. These are people that are looking at how they need to evolve, how their companies need to evolve. They're also in a place of decision. They can say, we're going to operate in this city or this region or this state. They have that capacity to make those decisions, working with whatever structure they may have. But we also know that as they're exposed to where they need to be thinking, what they need to be doing, they're going to ask, where is the workforce or where is the education that could hit this need you're talking to me about? Because these are companies coming in globally. So we want to be deliberate and answer the question for Deloitte before it's even asked. Well, this region, this state's thinking that way. Not only are they thinking, but they're mobilizing. So we've said a lot this morning. There's a lot to this. We appreciate your investment again because in the time that we were coming to you, we didn't have a lot of things known yet. We just knew the questions we need to be asking. We knew who we need to engage with to get to where we are today. So thank you for stepping out. That was in part risk with the public sector to say we're going to step into this, but we know it's the right thing to do. So thank you for doing that with the other partners. And again, we're really mobilizing this. And part of this too is that we welcome you to talk to us outside of this conversation today. If there's questions you have, please let us know. We want to work through those questions because we think it's very important that you get the answers that you need to be able to have to speak to your constituents as well. So, Mr. Manager.
Mayor, that's the end of the presentation. As they indicated, they're willing to answer any questions you have regarding the initiative.
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it. It sounds very exciting. I am trying to get a better grasp on how do we show the public the direct impact, the metrics. You know, how are we moving the needle from this to this? Do we have any idea how broad the reach is? Do we expect to reach this many people? Just trying to get a better understanding as to what we get directly for the investment.
Yes, sir. And as we started this morning, it's all about ROI, right? It's like how are we seeing a return in what we're investing in? Councilman, how that's going to happen in several different ways, a lot of ways actually. One is going to be able, like for the partnership, we'll be able to point back to job creation. We'll be able to point back to the capital investment in our community. Those are things that we run very typical, and you expect us that. The development of annual payroll, those are some fixed things, right, that we can point to say, as we're working on talent, which is, we talked about is the new infrastructure, right? It's helping us be able to fuel business, to be able to say, we understand where the jobs are, how they're evolving. We can point, and we'll do that deliberately. And part of that will be to be clear and concise in how we do that. The other part, as Sherry has talked about, and as Keith has talked about, we'll be able to track the training that's received, the placement of those jobs. How is it that we're getting into underserved communities and connecting individuals to job opportunities? Those are all things, and this will be, in part, will be a developing matrix working with you, I think, as the city. We're working with your economic development team, the county, and the other partners as well. I do believe in having where you can say and point back to, here's some direct connections. Some of these may not have to be quite as direct, but yet it involves the ecosystem of how is it you're creating opportunities. So again, I think there'll be a lot of different ways in that regard. And I would, Sherry, Keith, if there's any other specifics maybe within your areas that you want to add, we could do that as well.
Also, Tammy, you introduced a slide on that was a drill down on one of the initiatives, and I believe there are a series of measures and benchmarks for each of those initiatives, aren't there?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And we have several of those, as I said, within the roadmap itself. We'll be using that whenever we get this oversight group together. That's also one of our challenges to them will be to say, how will we know we're making difference within each of these categories? So that is definitely on our to-do list.
So, but we have some numbers in our plan, right? I mean, we have some kind of expectations or some kind of measurement to start out. Any 50,000 foot view, any kind of numbers that we expect, reach or.
We have the data that Deloitte shared with us about numbers of employees,
Okay.
what we think the pipeline is right now. But the people who are really closest to will be borrowing their data and making sure that we're reporting that back. And I know everybody here, especially Workforce Alliance and WSU Tech and our other institutes of higher learning, all have that information as well.
When could we expect to get some of those goals and objectives? I mean, we don't want to do it retroactive, right? I mean, I know what you're saying, Jeff. We've got a lot of different things we monitor that we can see later on, but I'd
Actually,
like
we'd
to see
love
a forecast.
Yeah, we'd love to share the baseline with you.
Okay.
So I think by the end of the summer, we should have some of that nailed down.
Great timeline. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a couple questions. So first, definitely appreciate the presentation. I was sold on this when I had my meeting with Dr. Utash, and when she compared this to how we got NIAR, I was sold because I definitely want to see that for our future. But as we talk about this, and some of this was covered, I know, on slide 11, there's always a group of people that feel left out. They feel like this is something that's not for them. This is maybe above them. What are we doing to help those folks understand this opportunity can work for them? What are we doing for young people as we look at technology in our future? We also know that we don't have shop classes in high school for the most part, so what are we doing to get young people to understand that even if they can't do the tech stuff, they can still do some metalworking or woodworking or automotive work? What are we doing to help returning citizens know that these are opportunities for them? Councilmember Fry and I just went to El Dorado Prison as a part of our leadership program last week. The guys that were there said, give us a chance when we get out. And oftentimes they don't get that chance. People look at their background. So what is it that we're doing for them? That's a great workforce. We even had a guy who said he turned away 6 people who have felony backgrounds that could have helped him, and his business needs people. So, how are we getting all of these different populations worked in and interested and breaking it down in a way they can understand?
Fortunately, Councilman, we have 2 leading people in this area that can give you specifics on how that's being addressed. Thank you.
Well, certainly appreciate the question. I think it's incredibly relevant. And this is one of the values of this kind of project is with the partnerships we're putting in place, we will be able to leverage some resources and align services to have a deeper reach. And just a couple quick examples, and I know Dr. Utash can share some, but we have a very robust youth employment program right now that is emphasizing some of those things you just talked about. There's other career pathways outside of a traditional four-year college degree. We're working directly with a number of our trades, putting together career camps for young people over the summer so they can help them form some of their academic choices during the school year. And on the justice-involved individual population, that certainly is a priority that our organization's had for a long time. We have a couple different projects underway, grants that are directly doing just this. How do we find those individuals before they get out of prison? My goal is always to be, if somebody gets out on a Friday, we have a job ready for them on a Monday. And a lot of times it's an ABC approach. First job is any job. We got to get them a job. Then there's a better job out there, and then there's a career. So there's also an ongoing trajectory that we're going to be leveraging into this kind of project so we can get somebody who may not be ready for a career job upon release, maybe within 6 months, a year, get them to that position where they can add to the economic vitality of this community. But I think those are excellent questions, and I think that does bring the power of this particular partnership. And I think we'll be able to see some of the outcomes that Councilmember Bluebaugh was asking about too, and how we're going to baseline some of those and get to some metrics. But appreciate the question. I think it's very relevant.
I too appreciate that question. I would just add just a few things that are going on that can continue to be amplified to your point. So the first thing I would point to is the partnership that WSU Tech has with Goodwill in the Unlocked program. So we have citizens that are coming out into work release, and they're going into automotive, mechanic training, welding, construction science. There's about 4 or 5 areas. And we're having really great success with that. It is, as you can imagine, it is high human touch, and it's very high case management, so it's an expensive program to do. So we are a little limited just from a funding standpoint, I'll be very honest, between Goodwill and WSU Tech. That's one thing. The second thing I would say is that, we're currently serving about 3,300 high school students in our campuses. So kind of taking the void of that vocational education that used to be there and moving it into post-secondary, so we're not duplicating labs and equipment and faculty and all those kind of things. And that can grow, and that needs to grow. The third thing I would say is that, this has been a really interesting month for us. USD 259 came to us and said, we're trying to reimagine summer school for some of our underrepresented middle schools. Will you help us? So we said yes. And we thought in the beginning it was going to be 50 to 100 kids. We've actually, between what we've done with USD 259 Summer School, Girls Rock Science, and a Makers Camp, just this month, we have brought just shy of 1,000 middle school kids from underrepresented areas of this city onto our campus at both NCAT and at WSU South, and they have been exposed to a full day of hands-on learning and seeing careers, flying drones, building airplanes, doing phlebotomy, doing blood pressure testing, dealing with vet tech, turtles and dogs and things like that. So, exposing them to careers that they would never, ever, ever probably see or know anything about. So all those things certainly need to be amplified, but those are just some of the things that have just kind of occurred out of this work.
That's awesome. Is there any way, I guess my last question, to loop in some of the work we're doing with our juvenile intervention team? So some of the young folks who might think selling drugs or doing other stuff is their way to go, to get them and grab them and say, here's an actual better opportunity, and then bring them into that same pipeline as well, so they have those opportunities to maybe stop doing that and do something legitimate that won't get them in trouble.
Love to work with you on it. Because we can make a difference. That's the great thing about this. we're all in the life-changing business somehow. Some way, somehow, we're in the life transformation business. And there's all of these different populations that we need to look at, and we need to serve better. And so happy to work with you on that and kind of reimagine what does that look like and how do we transform their lives. And I think there's so many opportunities out there. But what we've done is traditionally we've just looked at a traditional population. We haven't really looked at all of these incredible opportunities where we can lift up people within our own city and create a much better life for them. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm going to just kind of piggyback off my off my colleague or the previous speaker's comments here, because I'm concerned about investing back into our community and the people within our community. Usually I wind up in these spaces and we get these presentations, and there's a lot of data on what workforce wants, but there's very little data about what is holding back people within our own community from actually taking advantage of these opportunities. We know that I think 2 years ago there was 1,500 students who graduated from Wichita public high schools who have no plans for the year after that. This year I think it's 1,300. No plans. They aren't sure what their next step's going to do or going to be. And a lot of these strategies that we hear about for developing talent is bringing people in from out of state. And the reality is, I concur with the previous speaker that I'm not sure these folks really know that these opportunities are there, that they're for them, and really what are we doing to reach out to those people? And the other thing that I guess I am concerned with is the fact that we can't be looking forward with this. We've been supporting these programs and talking about this for a while now. What have we been doing up till now? What have we done this last year to try to engage those folks who are graduating Wichita public schools who don't have really a path forward beyond that? What was the outreach like for that? Because my understanding, the previous presentation, we have one community person that's out there actually in the community. Had there been mailings? Have people gone into the schools and talked with students and said, hey, if this promised scholarship, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You will not have to pay money if you get this scholarship. And also, are we directing those scholarships, I guess, to kids who otherwise wouldn't be in school? Are we actually increasing the pie, or are those scholarships going to other young people who would be there even without that scholarship?
I'll let Sherry, and I think both of them have responses, sir. Great questions. I think that point of clarity is important. So, Keith?
Well, Mayor, I just don't want you thinking the absence of maybe focus on those particular topics means we're not aware of those in terms of the awareness piece. And that's been one of my biggest challenges as operating a workforce center is how few people know there's a workforce center in the community. We're not ZipRecruiter, we're not Indeed, we don't do TV ads, we don't spend a lot of money on that kind of stuff. So we rely on our community partners, word of mouth, any kind of grassroots marketing and outreach that we can. But I can guarantee you we have people in the classrooms talking to students. We have the Sedgwick County's funded a community navigator program that is specifically working in key areas. We know that there are pockets of high unemployment within this community, whether that be in Oaklawn or in Plainview or in the 67214. So we are very focused on the awareness piece. The other is telling a story. I mean, how is this right for me? So we're going to be engaging in a lot of storytelling to put a person who grew up in this community and is very successful to go back and say, this is where I was, this is where I am now. Delivering that message to young people, to transitioning adults right now. We got a whole series of people who are in their 20s and 30s who are looking for a new job and new career. So we're not just thinking about attracting people into this community. How do we use the resources better that we have here? Very, very focused on that. And again, I go back to the partnership that we have here for this particular project. We will be able, and we do intend to get into those communities that have been underserved traditionally and to make more access and awareness available. So it is, please don't think in the brief time that we had here that is not a high priority for us and how we're going to be successful with this initiative.
So I would like to add that there is an incredible amount of work going on each and every day all kinds of initiatives, and I'd be happy to share those because there's a lot of different initiatives that we've got going forward. We have people that are employed at Wichita State and at WSU Tech that only work in the school districts. They never even grace our campuses, so they're working every day in that. And certainly, raising awareness, but this kind of goes back to a concern that I've had for years, and Tammy kind of she said something about this, but I've always said, ever since I started working on all of this back in the beginning of BEA, I feel as a community, we need a rally cry around the belief and the advocacy that education and training lifts up lives. And we don't have that community rally cry. And I think that to be able to do that, it takes everyone rowing that boat in that direction and saying that is an important thing for the fabric of our city, our community, and our region. And if we could come out of this with a rally cry saying that we all point to, and every citizen in this community knows that, and that becomes just as important as the Wichita flag, we'll get there.
And I don't mean to put anyone on defense at all. It's just the slide here is what we're doing now, what's happening in the future, and it has 7 words on it, and all the other slides have so much information. So really want to just make sure that we're how do I take this information and tell moms and dads that I see out in the community that this is the pathway for your kid in a couple of years? How do I tell my nephew that this is the pathway to stay in Wichita? And I guess what can we be doing to partner with this? And is there data, I guess, on what's holding people back? I'm guessing childcare. I'm guessing not only access to these training, to the campuses, but for continuing education training, but also childcare. Can we partner with the city to I guess, line up a childcare camp, fun activity with classes so that moms and dads can have their kids get dropped off to a city facility for the day while they're in classes? Like, what more can we be doing, I guess, to really not only understand the difficulties that are holding people back, but also how can we work together to address those?
I'm going to just real quickly on the child care issue, Mayor, I just want to assure you there is a couple of very active groups working on the child care issue right now, working with Child Start, Inc., working with some business and industry specifically to raise awareness, because you are right, that is a barrier to some individuals to getting into the workforce, advancing in the workforce too, and particularly women in the workforce. We know that it impacts them. And I do want to mention, and I believe she is participating, but Councilmember Tuttle has been very actively part of these conversations about developing a strategic plan. And so we will be bringing something, I think, to the City Council, some of our other partners very soon, about a very comprehensive strategy that we're going to be implementing here in this community when it comes to access to child care. But that is one of the barriers. I'll also say another barrier is our transit system. I mean, we have businesses that have jobs. They're either not on a transit route or the transit system is inconsistent to get their workers there on a regular basis. So there's some structural things that the city could be stepping in, and I think, as Tammy said earlier, this report has a lot of moving parts. And then when we get to the full breadth of it, there will be some things we will be bringing to you and asking for your support to help us implement these plans and get to the individuals that we feel would best benefit from the strategies we're laying out.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Layton's given us the time's up, so I want to make sure that we are paying attention to that as well. But I just wanted to assure you, if I could leave...
we could have you guys come back if you need to.
Well, that's fine, and we're welcome. We would welcome that. I wanted to leave you with this slide that's up there now with more than 7 words on it. This is going to be what we bring back to you to say, are we moving this forward? Are we changing the DNA in our community? And under Investing Boldly, you see ridership and transit and childcare. Those come up all the time. We have a lot of people working on that. If it's okay with you, I'd like to bring back a one-pager to you all that would show you the data that we'll be measuring, that will show you the resources that we weren't really allowed to get into in too much detail here, and then some of the examples and programs and resources that we already have in place. Would that be doable?
Sure.
Does that get to your, what else can we answer for you that way?
What did you do over the last 2 years to reach out to the students who have no path forward after high school to communicate with them this data so that they can engage in these opportunities?
Sure. Well, the data that we currently have and packaged is new, so we weren't able to do that. But I can guarantee you that WSU Tech and WSU are embedded in USD 259 schools, as Dr. Utesh said, and so is Workforce Alliance.
We can get you some information on
Yeah.
these.
It is hard. We're at the lowest unemployment rate we've had in many years. The people who are we've identified, the 1,500 or 1,300 students, aren't the easiest to track down. So when we talked about it takes individual reaching out in those communities to build that trust, that's where the focus is right now. And even if we're able to get in all the places in our community, we still are going to have a bigger challenge than what we'll be able to address just with our own region. So I hope that gives you some assurance.
And I would just, the other thing is that Dr. Thompson's been involved with this, with USD 259. She was actually part of the coalition that developed the ambition statement. I know that our team has been working with her staff on how is it that, you do exactly what you're saying, Mayor. How is it you tap into that, the middle school, high school, who's coming up. The other thing, just in closing, is that this whole process that we're going through, there's going to be things that work. There are going to be things that don't work. If we're finding success as we go forward, how do we accelerate that? How do we do it better? If it's not working, then we ask the questions, why is it not working? Is it something that we need to back away from and put effort somewhere else? It's not a perfect system, but what we're trying to do is say, how is it we're approaching it so that we can determine if we're having success? The other piece of this is, remember, we have to be nimble, because if you remember the Get Trained, Get Paid campaign, that came out of a COVID moment where it was like you got thousands of people being laid off, some with the hope maybe of going back, but not knowing. Working with the partners you've heard from today, there was literally a 180 flip of, okay, how is it that we get into the really hard hit zip codes where we've seen major layoffs and connect with them to say, there's hope for you in this community. There are jobs. There's training. Keith and Sherry both were getting dollars, so how do we connect you to those dollars? If you've ever thought about changing career, maybe it's just the time to do it because there's money to be able to do that. So I think part of it is how is it we build upon those successes, because that was successful. It's been emulated, in other parts of our community. So part of this is working with you ongoing. The other piece of it, as Tammy has said, is to come back periodically to say, this is how it is working. And there's robust conversations with industry in the partnership executive board meetings. I know, Mayor, you sit on that, and you've heard those conversations. And so it's about leaning in and getting solutions, and then determining, is it working or is it not? If it is, let's go. And how do we amplify that? So we appreciate, again, the opportunity to be able to give you where we are right now, just with this. This doesn't touch everything. It just gives you, hopefully, an idea of some of the framework that we have in place.
So I would, at the end, as this comes together, just maybe a thought for all of us. If we had, the old Uncle Sam campaigns, We Need You, Real Men, Real Heroes had a campaign with trade-in cards. If we all united, everyone's logo on something in some really targeted effort, whether it's social media, radio commercials, TV, flyers, it just says, to Wichitans, we need you. These are opportunities. We've got opportunities at Spirit, Textron, other small businesses, but here's your chance right now. Those flyers are in schools, so past the 3,300 students, everyone sees that our city needs you right now to take advantage of these opportunities, to get these jobs. I think that type of collective effort to let people know and also recruit from here in Wichita could help out, and I haven't seen that as a unified effort that targets all those different levels. But if that's something we could consider
And
as this goes forward.
And I'll just tag on the end of this, that comment, is I agree, we need a full court press on this. We know where these folks live. We know the address of people who graduate. I send them letters saying congratulations for graduating high school. We should be sending them letters saying you have a scholarship waiting for you. What can we be doing to get actually hands-on in the community? Put the research you all have done really to action. Like, how do we, as a council, as a community, how do we take advantage of this research, the opportunities that were talked about from Dr. Utash, and really get that information in the hands of people that will be a legacy changer for them. It will change the trajectory of not only their lives, but the lives of their entire family. And that's, I think, going to be an ongoing conversation that we continue to have. And that's what we want to do, is come alongside you all and make sure that we're doing our part, getting in there, building relationships with folks, and taking it beyond just, I guess, marketing, but more into the folks who might not think this is for them because they haven't presented all the information. And sorry, I know that my colleague, Councilman Blueball, wanted to jump in with a question. Sure. I didn't mean to jump in before you, but I know it was germane to the previous speaker.
Bob, will you remind me again, what's the city investment in this? And then is the county participating any? Is it all us? Can you remind me of that?
No, we had.
No, you and the city and the county invested the same.
Okay.
$150,000. The state put in $50,000 from Commerce. Workforce Alliance put in $100,000. The partnership has invested over $100,000 in this work, and then we're staffing it. Part of what, again, is we understand that to move things, you have to have, okay, who's basically getting up every day and thinking through it, who goes to bed thinking about it. That's Tammy. And then there's a mobilization within our team as far as the communications, and all this is a multifaceted aspect. Remember, things like ChooseWichita.com, that is a talent portal that is solely to talent. That is funded through the partnership. Again, there's a lot of vehicles here or instruments that we're using to move this aspect forward, but those were the funding partners in this particular work.
I thought we were using a deeper investment from ARPA funds for this.
Yeah, Councilmember, I was actually going to mention that. If we go back to the discussion with Councilmember Johnson and the mayor, we've invested, I think, about $2.5 million in ARPA dollars with WSU Tech to do, and Sherry referenced that, right, for drill down on manufacturing, and it's a partnership with 259. So it's targeted for students to get them in the pipeline and trained for manufacturing and healthcare or health-related services. So we're doing exactly what you had talked about, and we're using ARPA dollars for that to build on programs that 259 have done in partnership with WSU Tech.
Was that done this year or last year?
It was this year.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so we'll have some numbers from that.
Yeah, Sherry, I think Sherry mentioned they're standing up the program in August or September for manufacturing, and then healthcare, they're working on the facilities right now.
Okay.
But we'll have numbers for both of those future-ready centers.
Okay. Can we get some goals now or some kind of projection?
We've established all of that, including the performance measures. That's all in the contract that we have with WSU Tech for both of those programs.
Okay. If we get a summary of that.
Yes, I can get you the contract again, yes, because it's in there.
Thanks.
I'd be interested in hearing just overall some of the obstacles we have to retraining people already in the workforce and how we plan to address them. The mayor touched on it earlier about childcare. I would also like to hear about people with lack of access to the internet. That's another big one, I think, down in my district. You had hit on a couple of them, Plainview, and even though they're not technically in the city anymore, Oaklawn is another place. So that's something I'd be interested in hearing, is just how we're going to address retraining people who are already in a career that might just be obsolete here in 5 years or so.
And that's one of the biggest challenges we're facing right now, Councilmember, because for those individuals, we can't necessarily tell them, take some time off from earning income, go to school for 6 months or 2 years, and then you'll get a better job then. So one of the things we're working very closely on is an earn and learn model, where an employer can hire somebody that doesn't quite have the skill sets, but they are learning the skill sets through a partnership with WSU Tech or Butler Community College. It's on-the-job training, incumbent worker training. And when I mentioned the One Workforce Grant, those are some of the projects we have going on with some of those companies right now. If you need a cybersecurity certificate, they will hire you without that certificate, but they will train you to get it. So you know, that is one of the big things we're doing, and that's why this grant is going to be very important for the Workforce Alliance. So when we get to those individuals, we can put them on a pathway to where they won't have to interrupt income or go into significant debt to transition into a new career. That is one of the biggest challenges we have. We could probably go on to a lot more detail with that, and again, I would be happy to meet individually with you or any of the council members to provide some of the data that we have. But this is the kind of project that will help open up a pathway to just the individuals you're talking about, how we can help them transition. The other thing that we do is that we provide supportive services. So we can help somebody with child care system. We can help pay for that. We can help with transportation. We can help with those things too. So there are things in the system to help eliminate those barriers. It's just a matter of getting them in there and applying them in the best way possible.
Councilmember, in response to information the mayor brought back from DC and request he had, we're putting a report together on what each of our providers are doing to take advantage of the federal program that would provide wireless service for $30 a month for families that are not currently receiving service. So we'll give that to the council when we get that provider listing.
Thank you.
And we'd love to, if it's possible, through the research of the folks here, possibly learn about what other cities are doing to engage, create focus groups with people under the age of 40, people under the age of 30. I think there's a lot. I find myself in spaces where folks talk about people who are, just starting families, really laying down roots. That's the folks who are leaving Wichita. But in those rooms, there's really not much outreach. I think we jump towards, we need more bars downtown, or we need this big project done, or we need this or that. And when I'm in spaces where folks are actually living that's not what they're saying. So I would love if there's an opportunity to actually just really narrow in on what are the needs and the wants of people who are the target for these programs, the type of folks that we want here in Wichita to stay in Wichita, and what are the barriers? Why aren't more people taking advantage of these programs? Is it lack of information? Is it way we're presenting it? I would just love if we could, I guess, have a similar, and I don't know who'd want to do this, but a similar deep dive as we have on industry here, also on workforce, particularly for folks that are engaged in our community, or not engaged but could be.
So we will have a little bit of data for you, because remember I was telling you about the Community Resource Connector in 67219. One of the reasons we put that person in that place is because there's a lot of talk about what are the barriers, and there's a lot of people saying these are the barriers. But I want to find out exactly from the people that live there what are the barriers. So that's the relationship, the trust building that's going on with this connector into that community. And I think that's going to really give us it may validate everything we think, or we may come up with some barriers that we haven't thought about. To your point, and you have to create you have to put somebody there that's there all the time, all week long, creating that relationship, that trust, and then trying to get that information. So I think, from a pilot project, that's probably something we can come back to you by the end of this calendar year and give you some data.
And we'd love to help if there's any way to extend that so that we're in more than one community center and we have more folks working on that. But yeah, I think it's, if we did the same type of effort to understand what industry is looking for, to also understand what people are looking for, I think we would have enough information to make really great decisions moving forward. So yeah, I would love to learn more about it as that program in particular, but other programs as well.
And if we went down to 1,300 high school graduates, I haven't seen that, but if we did, that's a big win, because during COVID it was 17 and 1,800.
So long as the same amount of folks graduated and it fell off because of COVID,
Yeah.
but yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen that data, but yeah, I mean, if that happened, something good happened.
All right.
Mayor, that's all we have.
Thank you, everyone.